Hello, welcome to a special edition of CropLife Retail Week. I'm Eric Sfiligoj, editor of CropLife magazine, here today with special guest Jim Steadman. Jim, welcome to the program.
Well, thanks, Eric. It's a pleasure to be here. I follow your program every week, and I just stand in awe of the amount of information that you're able to provide to these folks. So I'm certainly hoping that we won't lower the standards of this broadcast with this session.
Well, I am flattered and appreciate the compliment, but that won't get you out of fun with numbers at the end. But Jim, let's start off. I think we talked before we came on air. I've never had you on before, so if you could introduce yourself to our viewers and tell them who you're with and what you've been doing these past few years here at our parent company, Meister Media.
Well, I'm senior editor of Cotton Grower magazine, and Cotton Grower is one of the older titles within the Meister family. I think we've been publishing Cotton Grower under different titles or sort of evolved to this current title over the past 70 plus years. I'm based in the Memphis area, right here in the middle of the U.S. cotton industry, and I've been working with Meister for since as an editor role since 2013, but I've really been working in the cotton industry for probably 40 plus years, off and on in different various assignments through marketing and through editorial.
Okay, well, great. Well, people may be wondering why I decided to have you join me this week, and the reason for that is pretty simple. Recently, our friends at John Deere had I guess you'd call it a field day, demonstration day, that you were lucky enough to be able to attend, talking about some of their new products for the marketplace, including one that I'm sure our viewers are going to be interested in to find out more about, the See and Spray. So if you could clue us in on when you were, where you were, what you saw, and why you think it's going to be particularly important for the marketplace going forward.
Well, I was fortunate enough to be part of a small group of cotton editors or people covering the cotton industry, editors and broadcasters alike. Got to go to Corpus Christi about 3 weeks ago. That would be late April, for a one-day demo of all of what they were considering all of their new cotton equipment. Now that included their new 7730 cotton harvester, which we saw for the first time back last fall. An impressive piece of equipment. There's a version for the picker group, and there's a version for that West Texas group that still strips cotton, simply because of the size of the crop and tradition more than anything in some cases. There were also some new technologies that they were talking about in terms of tractors and planters that are coming here within the next couple of years. But the big piece of equipment, the big star of the show, was the See and Spray Ultimate. I believe you saw a static display or something of a rough demo of it during Commodity Classic back in early March?
Mid-March, yeah.
Mid-March, okay. Yeah, too many shows going on at that same time, so it's hard to keep track.
Which is something we haven't been able to say the last few years. So
no, not at all. But it was, it's really impressive to see it literally standing there in front of you. It is mounted on the on John Deere's traditional sprayer chassis that most growers would be familiar with. It's completely factory installed. It has a dual tank on it, either in 1,000 or 1,200 gallon capacity. So in part of that tank, grower could put in a standard herbicide or a plant growth regulator or an insecticide treatment. And in the other side of the tank, they could put in a non-contact or a non-residual contact herbicide that would allow them to make basically a pass through the field, taking care of a broadcast spray while at the same time targeting individual weeds that may show up in those rows and hitting them with a specific spray. It's an amazing system to see.
If I remember right, it's on the boom arm, of course, and it's like a camera, and it's like, I think it's like one camera per two nozzles. Is that the arrangement? Something like that?
Yeah, it's I think back to the when you and I first started hearing about this technology was what, 2015, something like that. And the
Thereabout,
first
yeah,
and the first prototypes that we were able to see were like 4-row or 2-row units.
right.
And even though it was, we saw a lot of promise with it, and a lot of the extension weed specialists, particularly down in the southern market, were paying some very close attention to it because of all the pigweed situation. Nobody could really figure out how you were going to put it together to work on a large scale. So when Deere bought, this was Blue River Technologies, when Deere bought Blue River in 2017, everything kind of went undercover at that point. Nobody was exactly sure what was going to happen with it. But yeah, like you said, we've got, now you've got a unit that has a 120-foot carbon fiber boom. There are 36 cameras on that and an equal number of processors. And those cameras are scanning roughly about 2,100 square feet of row at any time, at all times. When these units have been programmed basically to identify weeds, to tell the difference between a weed and a plant and a cotton plant, or any plant. I think soybeans and corn are also involved in this. The processors identify the images of the weed. They send a signal to that individual nozzle along that boom to just a quick application of a herbicide on top of that weed. And that whole process of, as they said, of scanning, identification, and spraying is about 0.2 seconds, or basically the blink of an eye.
Wow.
And this is all at 12 miles an hour moving through the field.
And I was going to say, if I remember correctly, when you got back from your trip, you had mentioned that the demonstration you saw of the See and Spray actually took place in a parking lot with plastic plants, I believe.
It did take place in a parking lot. We were the day we were there. We were at King Ranch, which is like a gazillion acres. They're just south of Corpus Christi, a very, very famous farming operation. And we were going to go out and do some field demonstrations with with dye injected into the tank, so you could actually see it hitting the rows. But we were dealing with 30 to 35 mile an hour winds that day, and nobody thought it was prudent to to head out into the field to try to see just how accurate it could be. So instead, you move to plan B. And in this case, yes, there were small plastic plants that had been basically placed onto the gravel lot around the cotton gin where we were meeting, and we did a very slow motion demonstration of how the system worked. And we were able to walk behind it, and we could see our little target plants out there. And lo and behold, they were staggered in different. They were not all lined up together. They were staggered in different locations and all that. But yeah, you'd move up and you'd hear this little hiss and see a spray, and you walk up and look at the plant, and it's just soaked. And there'd be another little hiss and a spray from another area. So there, it was really and truly, you kind of look at it and go, this has been kind of a science fiction type thing. It's feel like it's been a dream for a long time. But when you're dealing with a lot of the weed issues that that cotton growers and soybean growers, and it's not necessarily a southern issue, it's a US issue at this point. This is something that is really, I think, going to make a big difference in managing some of these resistant weed issues.
Okay. And if I remember correctly from the article you put together after you got back from the trip, John Deere at this point here in 2022, they're demonstrating the system. I've seen it at a couple of the trade shows, like you said, that I've been
Right.
to. You've seen a demonstration, but kind of give our viewers an idea of what the timetable will be going forward for the availability of See and Spray in sprayers in the field, between
Sure.
now and the next few years.
No, absolutely. They do have some systems, excuse me, in the hands of some selected growers right now. That they've been. We talked to one grower who's in South Texas who basically had his cotton already planted and made his first herbicide applications with it. So there are several units out in those types of situations, and Deere is using those for a lot of localized demonstrations on this. They also have, I think they said 10 demonstration units that they will have available for dealers to use this year for demonstrations to growers and to retailers in their areas as well. And they did mention there's going to be a demonstration somewhere in, I think somewhere in central Illinois coming up in June. And I'm asking myself that question, but anyway, I know there are other demonstrations set up, all over the different places along the Cotton Belt and certainly in the Midwest. They are going to roll this out very, very carefully, as you can imagine. They will start taking orders for this piece of equipment starting this summer. Obviously, there's no pricing available at this point, but the initial order is only going to be, it's a limited double-digit production of the equipment at this point. So less than 100 units are going to be built and available, and are only going to be focused in certain geographic regions, Texas, the Mississippi Delta, and the Midwest. And then orders for the entire US will open up next year for model year 2024. But yeah, if you want to get your name on the list for one of these units for 2023, keep checking. The order window will start opening sometime this summer.
Oh, very good. Well, appreciate the insight into what you saw at the field day you were at. That sounds really fascinating. And I'm sure that we've been doing some still images over top of our conversation here, so our viewers can get some idea about what this system will look like and how it might actually function when it's in the field. So, well, Jim, as we established at the top of our program, you, of course, are editor over at Cotton Grower, our sister publication.
Right.
I know one of the things we've been following, of course, are the planting intentions from USDA that came out at the end of March. And, everybody, of course, on our side of the building, we're talking about the fact that corn was going to be down 4%, soybean up 4%. But you guys actually in cotton had some good news as well. I think it was up 9%, I believe, was the projected acreage. But talk a little bit about, the numbers that you saw from USDA and how that jived or didn't with what you were seeing on a state-by-state basis as you've been making some of your trips and talking to folks around the country.
Well, I think, one thing you have to keep in mind on this is that we're like other commodities. Cotton is setting right now at almost record-setting prices. I think over the past week, cotton prices hit $1.40, which is just almost breathtaking, and certainly makes a lot of growers smile. But then cotton is also faced with the same issue that everybody else is. Your input costs are also high, and availability of products and availability of equipment, and everything is. It's still the same situation regardless of which state and which commodity you're working in. But when we started this year, all the initial projections, including the one that we did back in January, we're showing we were going to be somewhere around 12.5 million acres. And that was up from 11.9 million, which I think was the final planted acreage for last year. So it's a pretty substantial growth when you consider that cotton just doesn't grow everywhere. And, in certain states like Georgia, you may have 1 million acres of cotton, but it's usually in a rotation with peanuts. And they do that for a reason. Same thing in Texas. There are parts of Texas that there's a rotation maybe with wheat or with sorghum. And then again, there are other areas where they can't grow anything else but cotton because of, the dryland situation. So we saw that projection number fluctuate as February came along and prices kept going up, and the acreage number kept going up. I think USDA's number before they came back to their final planted intentions, I think was 12.7 was one of was their projection at the end of January. Now, when their planted intentions came out, it all came back down to like 12.3 million acres, which I think was pretty much where most of the economists and experts were figuring it was going to go. the factor is, of course, planting is underway. Whenever you get into the South Texas area, Arizona, California, the crop is already in the ground out there, has been in the ground out there for almost a month. Just because they can get in and get going. And they've actually had a little bit of good soil moisture down in some of those areas, with the exception of California, of course. Parts of the southern Mid-South down in Louisiana has been making some real good headway in terms of getting the crop in the ground. I think USDA's crop progress numbers that we saw this week had the US crop at like 16% planted, which is actually just a little bit ahead of the 5-year average for the date. Talked to a couple of consultants this week. One down in Mississippi said that most of his growers probably about 50% planted at this point. There's some good activity going on over in the Southeast, but truly the majority of the crop is getting ready to go in the ground here over the next 3 to 4 weeks in all geographies. West Texas is still just, waiting. They are caught in the midst of this horrendous drought. If there was a category higher than extreme drought, then I think West Texas would probably fall into that area at this point. There's no subsoil moisture. Growers who are fortunate enough to have irrigation are using it just enough to wet the soil, be able to get the cotton planted, and that's about 5.5 to 6 million acres of cotton out there that may or may not get planted this year, depending on whether Mother Nature smiles and sends rain their way. It's as opposed to last year, where they started with sort of the same conditions, and then it started raining on Memorial Day and it never stopped for a couple of weeks. And all those dryland acres that you normally get a crop on every 3 to 5 years came through, and it was just a wonderful crop last year. Don't know that it's going to get there this year or not. Growers are making contingency plans, but at the same time they're eternally optimistic out there, and so we'll see. We keep our fingers crossed and hope they get a little bit of rain here over the next couple of weeks.
Well, and I know the last time I happened to be down, I think Tennessee, Arkansas area, and that was a couple of years ago, mind you, but I know that I expected to see a lot of cotton, and actually I saw quite a bit of soybean going in down there. I mean, I know the soybean numbers are up. Are you noticing it? A, are you noticing the Mid-South? And B, the West Texas area, I'm assuming soybean is not an option. So
soybean is not an option. Outside of that Southeast Texas area, that coastal area, and maybe a little bit down in the southern part of the state, soybeans are just not going to be an option. It's not a good hot weather, dry weather crop. But in the Mid-South, it's an extremely good option for if you can't get all of your cotton acres planted, then you can always come back with a soybean variety that will they can get in quickly, they can treat it and not have to spend as much time monitoring that crop as you do with cotton. The normal order of things down here is corn goes in first, and the corn window is quite honestly is almost closed, is pretty much closed at this point. And I don't think we were expecting corn acres to be down this year anyway because of fertilizer costs and other factors. And so that's part of the reason cotton acres were going up. So we're in the cotton planting window right now, and we'll see how far we go before that window starts closing. And growers who are already planning to plant soybeans will go ahead and get all those squared away and probably in the ground, and then look to see if there's options to maybe shift some of those acres back over, depending on what happens with weather and what happens with prices.
Okay. Well, then maybe down here in the road, of course, when this video is airing, it'll be about the middle of May, but maybe we'll have you back on sometime in early June to give us what the update of actually how things played out between then and now. So, well, very good. Well, Jim, thank you for that update. Now, as I warned you at the top of our video, it is time for you to take a quiz. Time for fun with numbers.
Well, I'm coming prepared. I'm putting my thinking cap on.
All right. So I'm going to hit you with a number. This number is a year. So,
a year.
And then
Okay.
I'll give you 4 options to pick from to figure out what that year might represent. So the number year is 2011, 2011. All right. So your options are: option A is 2011, the year Blue River Technology was founded. Or is 2011 B, the year John Deere first introduced a prototype autonomous tractor? Is it C, the year cotton first topped the 12 million acre mark? Or D, is it the year that former cotton grower editor Bill Spencer first coined the phrase, "China must be stopped"?
I'll take D completely off the board at this point, because I think, as I recall, Bill was saying that back in the late 90s.
Exactly. Yeah. And I will clue you in that, yes, I think that came from some of his editorials that were in the late 80s, early 90s, when he was not exactly happy, shall we say, with China's cotton policy at the time. So many a column either ended or was headlined, "China must be stopped." So that sort of became a little of a catchphrase here in the office for various things.
There are a lot of other catchphrases that have worked their way through the cotton market that we won't go into.
Yes, let's keep this PG.
Yes, we do. We want to make this family friendly, just in case.
But of the other 3 options, what do you think?
Okay, let's see. It was not the year Blue River was started. Blue River came a little bit after that, I do believe. He smiles, smirking. I think we've had over 12 million acres since 2011. So that leaves what, option C?
No, B, which John Deere, the first prototype autonomous tractor.
Okay.
That's what you're going to go with?
I'm going to go with that.
I'm sorry, my friend. Buzzed. No, actually, you're right about cotton acreage, by the way. It was well over 12 million acres for much of the early 2000s, sort of dropped off in 07, 08, then recovered back around 11 or 12, but was much higher before that. And the first autonomous tractor for John Deere actually was at that event. It was in 2001. So that goes back further than that. No, Blue River Technology was actually founded in California in 2011. And as you had said earlier, acquired in 2017 by our friends at John Deere, who own it to this day and are doing some great things with it based on the See and Spray you just saw.
They are. And at this meeting that I attended, there were a couple of representatives from Blue River there. And let me say how impressive and brilliant these people are. As editors, we get to see a lot of things and we get to learn about a lot of things, but in some cases, it's like it's a mile wide and it's deep in terms of the level of knowledge and understanding. But these folks are they're very, very sharp. And if the folks that were there are indicative of everybody else attached to that technology, then there's going to be some great things happen here within the next couple of years, not just with Deere, but I think with machine learning and vision learning and artificial intelligence. There's going to be some amazing things come to cotton fields and soybean fields and corn fields and wheat fields and everything here within the next decade.
Very good. Before we go, Jim, let me give you a chance, because I know you had commented on me the fact that I do this video, but you do a podcast as well. If you want to,
yes, we do. So yes,
for that. Sure.
Yes, shameless plug for the Cotton Companion podcast. We have been doing this since 2016. I think we have finished episode number 117 of the podcast. When we started, it was something we had absolutely no clue what we were doing, which is the case in most things when most things get started. But it's twice monthly. We usually we talk about things that are, of interest, news that may have happened within the 2 weeks prior to each podcast, or in some cases, days before. But then we always try to bring in a guest or two, sometimes a panel, to talk about a specific topic. And we talk economics, we talk weed control, we talk insect management, we talk technologies. Our latest one of the episodes we just completed right after my visit with John Deere was with Dr. Ed Barnes, who heads up all the agricultural engineering studies with Cotton Incorporated. And so we talked about the technology with him and kind of, picked his brain a little bit about what may be coming. So, it's good insights on that. We have even talked to a guy who tracks hurricanes for a hobby, because believe it or not, hurricanes become a great big deal in the cotton market. As you start moving into the summer. There's nothing worse, and we've seen it over the last couple of years, of having a beautiful crop sitting there and then seeing it blown away, in 2 days. So it's, but we look for things that are topical for the industry, but also some things that might be a little bit of fun. So Cotton Companion Podcast, you can find it wherever you source your podcasts, or you can find it attached to our website, which is cottongrower.com.
Very good. And yes, if you're a regular viewer, fan of CropLife Retail Week and have an interest in what's going on in the cotton market, we'll have a little link here at the bottom of the screen so you can check it out, Jim's podcast for yourself. Well,
Great.
Jim, thank you so much for joining us this week on CropLife Retail Week. And thank you, viewers, for joining us as well. We hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you again real soon.
Sounds great. Thanks, Eric.
If you have questions or comments about today's episode of Retail Week, contact us by email or Twitter, or type your message in the comment section below. Your feedback is important to us. We will try our best to address your thoughts in next week's episode, and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel.